I'm excited to tell you about a service I've personally used and had real success with. It's called Podpitch. If you work in PR or communications, or if you're a founder or an independent creator trying to get your ideas in front of new audiences, this is worth paying attention to. Podpitch is a podcast pitching service that uses AI to help you find and book shows for you or your clients. There are tens of thousands of podcasts actively looking for guests. The hard part's always been finding the right ones and reaching them in a way that feels personal. Podpitch does that work for you. It indexes over 3.5 million podcasts, analyzes the fit based on your expertise, and then helps you pitch the shows that actually make sense for you. Here's how it works. You drop in your LinkedIn profile or your clients, choose your keywords, and Podpitch builds a smart media list and then writes tailored email pitches to each and every host. You can be as hands-on as you want. You can edit every message before it goes out or let the system do the heavy lifting. I've used Podpitch myself. I booked dozens of podcasts appearances, all on my own, without a PR rep, simply by using the platform. I can vouch that it works, and it saves an enormous amount of time. If you want to get your voice out there in the fastest way possible, check out Podpitch. You can find a link in the show notes to book a live demo at podpitch.com/Media Copilot.
You know, there was a time when newsrooms would say that a nightly bulletin would just show up and say, sources have told us this. And that was kind of good enough because the trust was there with the audience. But I think that is no longer good enough, and that audiences are craving the story behind the story.
Hello, and welcome to the Media Copilot. It's a podcast that explores how AI is changing media, journalism, and content creation. I'm Pete Pachal, longtime tech journalist and founder of the Media Copilot, and I'm excited to bring you fascinating conversations with fellow journalists, media executives, and the people building how the business of news will work in the future. This week, I'm joined by James Law, editor-in-chief of Storyful. If you don't know Storyful, it specializes in authenticating viral videos and social content, basically confirming what's true before it spreads. If you've ever seen a news site post a viral video during a breaking story, there's a good chance James's team was behind verifying it. Obviously, the demand for understanding what's real and what's not is at an all-time high with AI in the mix. With tools like VO3 and Sora 2, there's just a lot of AI video out there. And it's not all Sam Altman cameos. James and I spend a good chunk of time talking about the increasing challenge of being essentially a content authenticity cop in the age of AI. Not just what it takes to spot deepfakes, but also how to even think about it now that everyone's attention is scattered and the media is just one of myriad places people are getting their information. James also shared his take on C2PA, which is an emerging standard to verify content automatically, and what other provenance standards mean. How are they working? What isn't working, and what progress needs to be made before the industry can really start relying on these? And we also zoomed out to the big picture. How does Storyful see its role in helping newsrooms ensure their content's legitimate, even as public trust in media is at an historic low? Well, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And if you do, I'd be grateful if you leave a review for this podcast. Reviews, especially in Apple and Spotify, really do help the show. Please leave one if you can. Also, a quick note, you may not know this, but a big part of my business at the Media Copilot is teaching AI to editorial teams. And I host a monthly virtual AI class for beginners. It's only 60 minutes. Like everything I do, it's focused on practical takeaways for media professionals, people in journalism, PR, and communications. And it's only $49. Each one's a live class, so it's always up to date, and I guarantee you'll walk away with something you can apply to your day-to-day. You can sign up at mediacopilot.ai. All right, now it's time for my conversation with James Law, editor-in-chief of Storyful. James, welcome to the Media Copilot.
Good to be with you, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you're here so that we can verify things a little better. I'm going to trust that this is you and not a deepfake version of you, but I guess I'm asking for that same trust on your end. So let's just assume we're both real right now, but I really want to dive into what you do at Storyful, the verification that you guys do with media, and a lot of the facets around that, because it's obviously a pretty fascinating and vastly growing thing in our media ecosystem right now. But I'd really love to start with you and your history at Storyful. So, like, what drew you to the company, and what is interesting about what we might call the verification space and Storyful's mission?
Yeah, so I've been the editor-in-chief of Storyful for a couple of years now, and Storyful is owned by News Corp, and I've got a long history with News Corp Australia. That's the accent you're picking up there. But I'm based in New York now, and this role appealed to me because ever since I was like a baby journalist, I very much enjoyed the myth-busting side of journalism. You know, there can be a lot of misconceptions out there in the world, and I always enjoyed kind of digging into that and kind of educating the audiences about things with that through that lens of fact and truth. And
You're
that's
the
what
well
Storyful
actually
does.
guy.
Well, actually, yes, indeed. There's a satisfaction to doing that,
Sorry to
and
interrupt.
that's
Go
the
on.
core. No, no, but that's the core of what Storyful does. It's all about verifying what's true, what we know for sure, and getting that out to other newsrooms. And it's all also about like building trust with audiences, which is very much a challenge for newsrooms at the moment. So that's something that we can really help with.
Cool. Can you give me a sense of the scale of the company right now, and also like what a typical day or even a workflow is like? Because I've been tracking Storyful for a while. I remember we were using it quite a bit back when I was at Mashable, which is like 10 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a sense of like, obviously lots of stuff has happened since then. That was when social was huge. I mean, not that social isn't huge anymore, but it just feels like the scale of things that are being produced and being circulated and being touted is like either newsworthy or helpful is just vastly increased. So, give me a sense of like how much you guys handle in a typical day, and then how you handle it.
Mm. Well, look, to your point, when Storyful began, it was very much focused on breaking news. It was inspired by the Arab Spring and a lot of the kind of big news that was coming out of that news event was happening on social, and there was a real need to verify that video before it got published. And so that was the kind of beginning of Storyful. But as you identify, over the 15 years we've been in existence, we very much have expanded what we do. So newsrooms don't just want breaking news, they also want weather coverage, they also want the lighter side of what's happening on the internet, and we're very much experts at that as well. All of the viral content that very much feeds engagement from audiences, we're also quite adept at that content as well. And then beyond that, we also at Storyful have turned our expertise as, we sort of know social media better than anyone. We've also turned that into an intelligence business that helps give businesses insights around what people are saying online, conversations that are happening and shifting online, and how brands can kind of navigate that in order to protect their reputation. So certainly there's a lot of strings to our bow these days.
So is it kind of a little bit of just finding where the origin of certain conversations comes from, and when that happens, and you're kind of finding about these conversations, whether it's for publishers or for brands, is there some role you play in the debunking or redirecting, I guess, of those conversations, or do you sort of leave that up to them?
So in the intelligence side of the business, we are just kind of really trying to get a good sense of what people are saying and how conversations might be shifting, where there are risks for brands and things like that. So less about debunking in that space, but very much in the editorial space, which I look after. We do see that as an important role we have to play in, pointing out when there is misinformation proliferating online or trends that we're seeing. And I'm sure we'll get in to talk about AI in more detail, but we certainly do try to actively share with our newsroom partners when we see a piece of misinformation that's going out there. For example, with the advent of the Hurricane Melissa in recent weeks, the big hurricane that hit Jamaica and also parts of the US, we started to see a lot of AI videos circulating around that event. So we kind of collated all the fake ones together and shared them with our newsroom partners to let them know that they were fakes. And we do that a lot. We also see a lot of times when breaking news is happening, old videos will resurface and be republished with the intention to mislead people, such as in some of the LA riots earlier in the year, that old videos were being republished to try to trick newsrooms. So when we figure that out, we share that with newsrooms to debunk it.
And, we're obviously starting to talk about AI a bit, and I think it's a good transition on, first speak to sort of the scale of it that you've seen over, I guess, the past couple of years, just in that period, on how much AI has changed in terms of what the, not just the sort of volume of stuff, but also the quality. How has it made your job, I guess, more, I'm not sure if you want to say difficult or interesting or both or something else, but describe what the effect has been.
Storyful are kind of the experts at picking this stuff out. So, in the sort of 2 years I've been in this role up until today, we haven't been fooled, touch wood. And our journalists are expert enough that they were able to pick it with the naked eye. And there was something about AI in, say a year ago, where it had a sheen to it. There was something about it that looked a little uncanny. And because our team is so used to looking at the real stuff, they were quite good at picking it out before it even really got too far along our processes. I will say, however, that has changed. So since the advent of Sora 2, it was kind of this new AI generative model was launched in September. We've seen a big shift in the sophistication of these deepfakes. The ability to create something that looks more like user-generated content, which is what we trade in, has very much advanced. There's been a quantum leap forward. And, I still think that Storyful is very well placed to protect against this content and, very well placed not to be fooled. And we're see ourselves as leaders in this space and are really trying to help our newsroom partners, giving them tips about how to look out for it and how to combat it. So we are seeing it advancing quite rapidly, but we still feel very well placed to help the industry navigating it.
So you said sort of knock on wood. So it sounds like you said, you haven't been fooled yet. Is there been? It sounds like it's getting closer and closer. Like maybe there's more close calls lately, just because people are getting more sophisticated with tools that are getting more sophisticated. What is your outlook for the future here in terms of when can you guys keep up? I guess is the concern, not just as necessarily with the scale of it, which we didn't really speak to, but I presume there's just lots more of this stuff just circulating now. But how close are we to that? I'm not sure what the term is. It's not quite uncanny valley. Maybe it's on the other side of the uncanny valley, right? Because we can all sort of still see that sheen that you talk about, but it is getting better and better. And I do find I'm getting almost fooled in the sense that I'm kind of drawn in, and I'm no expert. I obviously follow this stuff, but I'll need to watch it for usually 10 seconds in, and then something unreal happens, and it's like, oh, okay. But other than that, it's tough.
Yeah, well, to answer your question, we remain very confident that the checks and standards we have at Storyful are going to be strong enough to ensure that we are continuing to verify things to a very high standard. And to give you a bit of a sense of what they are, with every video we have 3 essential checks. We check the date, we check the location, and we check the source. And usually, if it is an AI-generated video, something coming from thin air, along that process, it should get tripped up. So let me run you through it in detail. So there's the date.
Sure.
So if something happened on November 5, there should be other corroborating information. Let's say there was an explosion here in 6th Avenue, right? And our London team was looking after that story. What would they do? If there was that big explosion, surely the fire department would have something to say about it and be able to confirm that date. We'd also be wanting to check geolocation. So we do that with every video. And essentially what that means is we're matching what's happening in the background of a video, the buildings, the landscape, the signs, to open source maps. So Google Maps, for example, that would allow us to kind of match what we're seeing to a real location. AI sort of still can't really do that convincingly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing, and probably most crucial, is the source. So say we saw a video we were interested in, we would want to find who the original uploader of that video was. We'd oftentimes want to get them on the phone. We'd want to check their address. We'd want to make sure that if it was purported to have happened in Dallas, is this person from Dallas? Do they have a habit of posting newsworthy videos from Dallas? And so along all of those checks, we would feel quite confident that they are still strong enough to ensure that we're not publishing anything that is completely fabricated.
And to what extent do you use AI in terms of whether it's the filtering process or just highlighting the things that are in need of verification? Like, what is there? Is there an AI layer to what you're doing?
Yeah, we're certainly, we have a dual approach to AI. One of them is, and the core of what we're trying to do is help our newsrooms not publish anything that is fake. And that's kind of job one. But we also see AI as having a big opportunity for us. And we're in a very big experimentation phase in our newsroom about figuring out ways that can help us be more efficient, more effective, and move faster. So some of the things we're exploring at the moment is whether it can help us surface newsworthy videos faster, whether it can help us in some of our kind of back-end processes that remain a bit manual. Could that help us speed up some processes? Because if we license a video, there's a contract, and how do we get that to work as efficiently as possible? So we see it as a big opportunity, and you need to remain nimble. You need to embrace the new technology, and that's where we can see it having a lot of benefit for us.
And is it done in some ways to detect some of the things, whether they're artifacts or not, that humans might not be able to? And, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Like, I was talking a lot about human intuition and eyeballs, but maybe that's over time just simply going to get less reliable, right? Just as more sophisticated these things do, and you're going to need to rely even more on machine authentication or assistance with the authentication, I should say. And is that sort of an equation or a balance that you guys are seeing that is sort of shifting in the direction I'm predicting?
So it's hard to say what will happen in 3 years with this right. technology. But for today, Storyful's done an analysis of some of the detection tools that are out there. We looked at about 7 of the ones that are out there available to test and on the market. And what we have found is they have a role to play, but they are very far from being effective. We would probably rate it about 70% that it can actually detect manipulations.
Higher than
we find it's good. Well, let me give you our analysis in more detail, the caveats. And I'll start that really newsrooms want 100%. And so without that, you need to really question whether they are. I think people want a silver bullet, and our analysis is that they are not a silver bullet, that they are perhaps have a good role to play, but that you continue to need that human expertise to ensure that you don't get caught out. But what we found with the tools is they can work to about 70% accuracy when there are faces in the video. So they are good at detecting human facial movements, matching the sound of speech to the movement of lips. It's getting quite good at that. But when a human face does not appear, its accuracy dips to below 50%. So if there are animals in the video, it really can't quite understand how a bunny works and jumps around accurately. It has issues with landscapes. It has, it doesn't, it's not really able to detect all of the different types of video that are out there. Another thing
yeah.
Go on.
Oh, I was just thinking, like, what might also trip it up is just simple editing, which is to say that if you think about it, often when you want to check provenance, you're detecting whether or not this is fabricated at all, or if it truly represents the event. But sometimes you have something like it's a concert and someone put on a filter, and there's just kind of stuff that makes it look a little unreal, but it's actually a real event. And that must be a bit of a challenge for these systems to sort of discern, because it might flag it as like, oh, this has telltale signs of being fake, but it's like, well, it's really just been edited a little bit.
Precisely. Or yeah, there's a video screen in the video, and that then it thinks everything in it is fake. So that's right. It does struggle with that. And I mean, the other thing is, newsrooms, say a newsroom is interested in using one of these, if you've found a video on X, for example, and you want to test if it's real, if you put it into one of these tools, you don't have the video with the metadata, because what you're putting into the system is a duplicate, is a reproduction of that, really. And so without the metadata, the original file, it can also, again, struggle to really make a good determination. At Storyful, on the other hand, if we license a video, we insist that the person who recorded it sends us the raw file. And that's hugely important in the verification process. It's going to be a big file, right? That starts to give you some confidence. We can look at the metadata of that video and test whether it was filmed on the date they said, in the location they said, tick. We can test whether that what is in the metadata of that file matches with where this person says they live. So, all of this is to say that I think the tools have a part to play, and it'll be interesting to see how they get better. But you still will need that human expertise to give you that confidence going forward. The other challenge for the tools is that as the generative models improve, the tools have to improve in tandem, and they're often a little bit behind. And so ensuring that they are across all of the huge advancements happening in Sora 2, for example, is a big challenge for those tools. So we're watching this space. We hope that they will improve, but that's our analysis as of today.
Well, I'm glad you brought up metadata, because it gives me a good opening to get to the technical parts of the discussion I wanted to bring up with you, particularly with markers, content provenance, and standards. I guess they're emergent standards like C2PA. And I wanted to get your thoughts on just generally how useful those new standards are today as they're being implemented, but also what is holding them back from really taking on a greater role in this whole process, whether it's Storyful or just even more broadly. Because I definitely get the sense, and you tell me your take, but that it's slow going, that there's still a lot of sort of education, platform adoption, et cetera, to really get these sort of, I guess, what you would call maybe more automatic technical handshake verification to actually work, or at least be effective. Your thoughts on C2PA, the whole sort of background of technical content provenance, and what might need to happen for that to take hold, and how useful will it be ultimately?
Look, I think it's a very noble aim, and I think that we're pleased to see that there is people trying to solve this problem, but our view at Storyful is it's hugely challenging. So I think there's different places where it applies differently. So for professional photographers or professional videographers, allowing them to kind of watermark their content through the process has a lot of value and should be pursued. The challenge for us at Storyful is we don't really deal with professionals. The content that we acquire and that we're seeking every day is shot by everyday people who probably just once or twice in their life happen to be there when something newsworthy happens, and they filmed it with their phone. without Apple's endorsement of this and it trying to place that watermark at the very beginning of this process on every iPhone, it's very difficult to see how it can play out through the whole life cycle of a user-generated video. And I see no impression that Apple is embracing this concept at this stage. So that's the challenge for us in trying to fully embrace it, is that without everyday people having that in everything they film, it won't work in the way that we do. So it's a big challenge. And for professionals as well, it kind of needs everyone's buy-in to really work. So it's quite a challenge. I think it's a noble aim, but it is a challenging prospect.
Yeah, like you say, it kind of has to be end to end. Like you need obviously the device makers, like you said, and certainly the ones that are most fueling this type of content. You need to start there, but also, like, I think there's a big platform question, right? Of, like you mentioned, X. There's obviously tons of other networks like Facebook, TikTok, etc. And without some kind of participation or marker or whatever, I just feel like you're always going to be relying on people all the way down. And even with all this participation, you're going to want people, but to the extent that you don't really know anything going into like just first seeing something, because this doesn't exist, just makes it way more challenging. Maybe that's good for you guys because maybe there's more demand for services like Storyful. But ultimately, like I just someone's got to blink first. And to your point, I don't really see anyone really on the big tech side of it blinking.
No, and I don't know that they have an appetite for it at this stage. I think that their priorities have shifted quite significantly, where this is not a huge priority for them. So I don't see any of them being right on the forefront of this. And, you know, it also must be said that looking at, so Sora 2, for example, it obviously has the logo or the watermark on its content as it goes out, but they are so easy to remove. Like, one would think that the C2PA, like that watermark as well, would need to be very sophisticated to ensure it can't just be easily removed by anyone with a tool. So that's another one of the challenges.
You bring up a good point, because the way I characterize it there, maybe nobody's doing anything. But to your point, there's the watermarks, which are a fairly common thing, particularly for free services. YouTube has things for creators when you upload. You have to sort of mark it. They're basically the terms of service says you have to mark something that has been AI, like essentially a deepfake. You have to mark it as such. And even there's other examples I could cite, but there's things that are sort of this ad hoc, almost lip service to it. It's probably more than lip service, but I guess it's relying a lot on like self-policing, I guess, and people being good actors and having the weight of either a single platform and potentially getting thrown off as some kind of incentive here. Do you feel that's doing anything, or is it just woefully inadequate?
It is inadequate. It isn't adequate, to be clear. And I think that is very much the way that the platforms have approached a lot of these issues around provenance and around fact checking. Over time, I think it's clear from their behavior that they feel they are not the arbiters of truth. They are simply a platform, and that they just allow people to upload content or say what they like, and that's, I think they put it on to the community to police itself, has often been their approach. I think that is inadequate. I think that they have much more of a responsibility to influence what is on their platforms, and to kind of they have a responsibility to ensure that there isn't misinformation out there, and that there isn't harmful content on there. And I think there is more to do, and more to do in protecting copyright and ensuring that misinformation doesn't proliferate.
Yeah, that's fair. And I also to to sort of get maybe zoom out a bit on the bigger issue, because to be fair to the platforms, they obviously um, uh, need to provide a forum for people who are doing, say, satire, right? And like in other words, it's not like there's no legitimate use cases for AI videos. Obviously, there's a lot, and it's a question of how much good faith are you doing it with for your audience? Are you literally trying to fool people with a deep fake, et cetera? And that obviously, so in other words, like there needs to be, and I think that's sort of to the point of the YouTube um, stuff I was talking about earlier. It's trying to sort of serve both audiences.
Mm.
I guess I would sort of question, almost in a bit, maybe a devil's advocate kind of way, that as these deep fakes, as we've seen, go out there, when, say, someone makes some politician say something they never did, and that gets circulated. It's also like, because it's circulated pretty quickly, the way our social networks work, it also seems to be debunked fairly quickly. Like, in other words, just the way our society works, if something of a fake video gets spread, you're not going to be talking about it a week later or a few days later like it's real. And maybe that's me, because I'm in information and AI bubble and I keep track of stuff. So maybe that's naive of me to say, but I do feel like there's a uh, there were fears about deepfakes that were circulated probably a couple years ago when all this technology was relatively new, which haven't sort of um, turned our like, it hasn't turned our elections. We just had one here, like in November, that into some kind of circus where everyone's, I don't even know what's real, right? Um, so again, I think this goes beyond like just sort of what Storyful does, and the greater sort of ecosystem of like what a deep fake is, and then what the effect it has. But what is your take on that in terms of like, is the system somehow self-policing itself, or what are we missing here? Is it the wrong question?
Mm. So I think in terms of like outright bad actor content, so like making a candidate say something they didn't, I agree that the community has been pretty good at debunking those, and we have a role to play in that, and there's plenty of others who do. So you're right that there hasn't been that kind of outright misinformation that has swayed an election or caused a massive headache. What we find is it's a little bit more subtle than that. It's almost like the proliferation of the delightful misinformation is
Hmm.
almost a bigger problem, right? So the videos, right, where they create, what Storyful had a video where we verified some coyotes jumping on a trampoline, and it was like a night vision camera of that, and 100% real, verified by us, distributed around. And that almost created a trend of others creating bunnies on a trampoline, kangaroos on a trampoline. And they actually fooled people. People thought they were real. They shared them around and only found out maybe later or maybe never that they weren't real. And the way that that is insidious is like any one of those videos on their own is trivial, is probably funny, and people are like, oh, whoops, I shared AI. But what it does at scale, if this content saturates our feeds, there's a real risk there. We already know that audience trust in what they see online, and certainly in what they hear from news brands, is at an all-time low. And so I really do think we are at this place where if this content proliferates even further, it does add to that impression that I can't believe anything I hear
Mm.
or see. And certainly with younger people who have no automatic trust in any news institutions, really,
Mm.
that becomes a real risk. And certainly, if newsrooms republish this stuff, it can even worsen that impression of this lack of trust. So that's where I think it is problematic.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's a term that gets thrown around sometimes called like the liar's dividend, which I think is sort of the at least part of what you're talking about, which is to say, once this stuff is all in the system, and it is, you have to look askance at everything, and even say something that does come from a news source that is verified through your service people will just be going like, oh, it's probably AI, because I choose not to believe it because I just see AI stuff everywhere. Um,
Right. And
yeah,
so,
again, I don't know if that's something you guys can solve, but I mean, it's something you kind of like almost need to find your place in this system. You know what I mean? Because, it used to be 30 years ago, of course, the media was the media and they were the gatekeepers. And if you saw something generally on one of these highly circulated publications, you could trust it. And now, to your point, media is much less trusted. It's much less part of our broader attention. You might be
mhm.
spending a ton of time just on TikTok seeing AI video after AI video, and then the actual news, the verified stuff, is a much smaller portion of what you're seeing. So it's just this. It's almost like we're kind of halfway floating in unreality anyway, and you just the real stuff now is cheapened, And I again, I'm not quite sure how to solve for that, and I'm sure you're doing your best. But like, what is Storyful's place in sort of trying to, I guess, increase the
Well,
trust? For,
I think that there is an opportunity for newsrooms here because
Mhm.
although the content is proliferating, it's not clear how valuable it is. What is the value of that, diverting bunny video if it's
Mm.
not real? I think when people see them or if they get fooled by them, they feel cheated and they feel let down if they're not properly labeled, right? So in this environment, I think authentic content has more value, in fact.
Mm.
And I think that the way that newsrooms can respond to this problem is by breaking down some of the barriers and almost like revealing their homework to the audience is a way we can build up that trust and
Mm.
increase the value of the real. So, there was a time when newsrooms would say that a nightly bulletin would just show up and say, sources have told us this. And that was kind of good enough because the trust was there with the audience. But I think that is no longer good enough and that audiences are craving the story behind the story, right? So there's the reporting, but then there's also like the side story about this is how we know it. This is how we went about finding this out. This is who we spoke to. This is what sources we drew from. I think audiences are very interested in that, and I think that's the opportunity for us in shining a light on the hard work we do and trying to bring the audience into the process so they can understand its value. Because the value of the kind of viral videos that we do is that they are unexpected and delightful and real and unscripted. And I think that will always have more value than something that is being designed to delight you.
Mm.
It's the randomness of it that makes it valuable.
So, for smaller newsrooms and outlets that obviously want to be part of the solution and not the problem, but don't necessarily have resources to, verify everything, or if they do, or if they don't have it, maybe they just don't publish anything. I feel like there's a couple of different forces here that are they're kind of between almost a rock and a hard place. One is that people are demanding more visual content. It's just sort of part of our diet. Everybody wants to be spending more time on these networks that are, we mentioned a bunch of them already. And I think most publications and people wanting to reach an audience sort of need to play there. But doing good visual content takes resource, or getting stuff from you guys even. And so the what is the sort of route forward for them to either both verify but also still want to play in these spaces with trustworthy content? What are
Mm.
some key first steps to publications that want to say like, okay, we want to do more stuff to entice our readership visually, but we only have so many resources and so many people to go around?
Yeah, and look, Storyful's very connected to the industry. We have many clients, so we sort of know how straitened the times are and how journalists are being asked to do much more with much less. And okay, you've written the story, now do the video, now do this, now do this. So we're very sympathetic to those pressures that every newsroom is under. But I would say that the kind of two things you can do, I think it's about continual training. So, and Storyful has a role to play in this. We're out there sharing tips on LinkedIn and trying to help the newsroom to skill up in this space. So ensuring that the staff is continually trained around what are the clues to look out for AI video and all that kind of stuff is one step. And the other thing I would say about video, I know that smaller newsrooms can struggle to get a video strategy or to how do we do, we've done the text report, how do we turn that into a video? I think that newsrooms need to embrace the lo-fi nature of what social video actually is. A lot of the content that we acquire, a lot of the people who are successful on TikTok, for example, they don't have studios. They don't have training in how to read an auto cue. They are simply people putting their phone in front of their face and talking like I'm talking to you now. And younger journalists are perhaps less afraid of that than people think. And I think encouraging experimentation, encouraging, talk to your phone for a minute, explain your story like I'm talking to you in the bar, and put it up on your socials and just see how it goes, because it doesn't need to be highly produced. It's better if it's not. So just have a play around, and I think the audience will come along with you.
Nice. We'll plea for authenticity. It's all 100%. Authenticity is all you need, almost, if you were to author that paper.
Yeah, indeed. It's hugely important. Like on TikTok, people do not want the polished performance. They want the real person. And encourage journalists to be themselves and to show their personality. If they're a huge nerd about a certain subject, be that nerd online. That will be, people will resonate with that. That'll find an audience.
Definitely worth a lot more than a deepfake. James, this has been great. We'll leave it there. I really appreciate the time.
Great to chat to you, Pete. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with James Law of Storyful. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate if you'd take just a minute to leave a rating and review for the Media Copilot in your podcast app. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Media Copilot newsletter and check out mediacopilot.ai for our classes on AI for journalists, PR professionals, and communicators. Seeing you in the future.